Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the third edition of the Town of Ajax's In Conversation with Speaker Series. This is the Town of Ajax's initiative to engage residents on a variety of topics related to community, diversity, and inclusion. My name is Jay Sahak. I'm the Diversity and Community Engagement Coordinator for the Town of Ajax. With me tonight is Sarah Moore, Accessibility and Community Coordinator with the Town of Ajax as well. Tonight's speaker topic is the criminalization of mental illness. It promises to be a night of education, awareness, and collective discussion. Thank you for those of you who are joining us this evening in our audience and online.
The In Conversation with Speaker Series is supported by the Impact Ajax Community Support Program. Since 2013, this program has been dedicated to providing funding and resource supports for the Ajax community to continually increase the quality of life for its residents. Before we begin, in the spirit of reconciliation, we would like to acknowledge the land on which this event is taking place here tonight. The land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Mississauga, adjacent to the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, and in the territory covered by the Williams Treaty. This place is and will continue to be home to Indigenous peoples. Let us move forward together with kindness and respect. An acknowledgement of traditional territory is an invitation to reflect on personal relationships with Indigenous nations. When we acknowledge treaty, we are asking individuals to explore their rights and responsibilities to place and people. And when land is acknowledged, we are encouraging you to seek out the history and teachings of the natural world.
Thank you, Sarah. To start, it is important to define a key term in the title itself, and that is criminalization. What does that mean, and how does it work? How can society criminalize status? How can it criminalize poverty? And as you will hear today, someone's health. Criminalization is defined as the action of turning an activity into a criminal offense by making the activity itself illegal, or the action of turning someone into a criminal by making their actions illegal. But what if that activity is outside of their control? What if the activity is a means to an end or a cry for help? A discussion around criminalization, culture, and stigma and mental health wouldn't be complete without the story of Kalief Browder. In the early hours of Saturday, May 15, 2010, 10 days before his 17th birthday, Kalief Browder and a friend were returning home from a party. As they passed East 186th Street in the Bronx, Browder saw a police car driving towards them. More squad cars arrived. They were informed that there were suspects in the robbery that night. The officers searched him and his friend but found nothing. One of the officers walked back to his car, where the alleged victim was, and returned with a new story. The man said that he had been robbed not that night, but 2 weeks prior. The police handcuffed the teens and pressed them into the back of a squad car. "What am I being charged for?" Browder asked. "I didn't do anything." He remembers an officer telling him, "We're just going to take you to the precinct. Most likely, you'll be home by tonight." Kalief Browder would end up spending 3 years awaiting trial at Rikers Island. For almost 2 of those years, he was held in solitary confinement. At Rikers, he attempted to take his own life several times. But even before his first attempt, he saw another inmate at Rikers try to do the same. "I didn't see him when he did it, but when I saw him, when they took him out of his cell, he had a sheet around his neck," Browder said during his deposition. That particular prisoner did not die, but the image of the fellow inmate with a bed sheet tied around his neck stuck with Browder. "So when I thought about suicide, that was the first tactic that I thought about." On Rikers, suicide attempts are sometimes referred to as manipulative gestures by officers who view them as efforts by inmates to escape from solitary confinement by faking the symptoms of serious mental illness. After his release from Rikers, he enrolled at Bronx Community College, but struggled with paranoia and delusions. At college, he had a grade point average of 3.5. However, his mental health problems had continued after his release, and he had made several serious attempts at suicide. He had been confined 3 times to a hospital psychiatric ward and struggled with paranoia and delusions. Finally, on June 6, 2015, at home in his second-floor bedroom, he ripped his bedsheet into long strips, which he twisted into a cord. In a nearby room, he removed an air conditioner from the wall, tied it to the homemade cord around his neck, and jumped through the window. His mother found his lifeless body 20 minutes later. He was 22 years old. This isn't an isolated incident, but it did have a profound effect. The story of Kalief Browder prompted President Obama to end solitary confinement for youth at Rikers Island. And since then, the city of New York has gradually taken steps to shut down Rikers Island permanently. For anyone interested in the story of Kalief Browder, his life, there is an excellent documentary right now on Netflix entitled Time, the Story of Kalief Browder.
Thanks, Jay. Tonight, we are grateful to have an expert panel of 5 individuals here with us to cover the topics of culture, stigma, and incarceration as it relates to the criminalization of mental illness. With us here tonight are Firdaus Hosseini, the National Director at the Canadian Mental Health Association, Keisha Facey, Mental Health Consultant at RFWC Consulting Services, Yusuf Fakiri for the Justice of Soli campaign, and Seble McConnon, Justice Policy Specialist. As well, we are joined here tonight by our expert moderator, Chris Bovey, the External Relations Officer for the Ontario Shores Centre for Mental Health Sciences. Unfortunately, Emile Joseph was scheduled to join us tonight, but due to extenuating circumstances will be absent from this evening. Tonight, our agenda will be as follows. We will hear a brief introduction from our moderator to set the context of this evening, followed by a brief presentation. We will then hear short presentations from each of our 5 speakers. Immediately following this, there will be a panel discussion facilitated by our moderator. During the panel discussion, we encourage you to raise your hand if you have a question, or if you feel more comfortable, please write your question on a Post-it note and provide it to one of our staff volunteers, who, could you please raise your hand so people can identify you? Thank you. Also, we want you to join in the conversation online. Ask questions to our speakers online on the town's Facebook or Twitter, or by using the hashtag #InConvoAjax. Any questions that we are unable to answer at this time, we would be happy to provide a response following tonight's event. If you are sharing photos or videos of this evening, please make sure to tag us at Town of Ajax.
Before I lay the housekeeping for the day, I just want to thank also the staff that are here from the Town of Ajax. There's a number of staff here if you just want to raise your hand as well for everything that you've been doing tonight. So tonight's event includes both in-person and live stream attendance. To access a live stream, please visit ajax.ca/inconversation or join us on Facebook Live. Following the event, you can also access the live stream by visiting the town's YouTube page. The washrooms are located in the lobby. If you go out the main doors here, the ladies' bathrooms to the left and the men's on the right. In the likely event of an emergency, please remain calm and follow staff directions. Emergency exits are located on the right side of the building. The bar will remain open for the duration of the event. Please feel free to access it at any time, but of course, drink responsibly. And snacks and refreshments are also available in the lobby as well.
Thanks, Jay. On a more serious note, some of the content that will be discussed this evening may trigger emotions and experiences within our audience, and we encourage you to please practice self-care. We suggest viewer discretion is advised, as some presentations and discussions may contain language and images that may not be suitable to all audiences. Please feel free to leave your seat at any time to grab a drink or take a break, as the In Conversation with Speaker series aims to provide an environment of shared learning, and we look forward to being your host tonight. Again, please note that the views discussed tonight do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Town of Ajax. Your participation, ideas, and feedback are central to the continued development of this series. While dialogue, questions, and comments are encouraged throughout this evening in our panel discussion, especially during the Q&A, after the presentations, we want to ensure that all of our participants and presenters tonight feel welcome and included in the discussion. We ask that all participants be respectful and refrain from comments which contain profanity or discrimination on the basis of race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, age, mental or physical disability, gender identity or expression, or sexual orientation, personal attacks or defamatory statements, insensitive comments, or any other message that does not contribute meaningfully to the conversation and the overall mission of shared learning tonight.
All right, so let's get started. At this time, I'd like to invite our moderator for the evening, Chris Bovey. Chris is the External Relations Officer at Ontario Shores Centre for Mental Health Sciences. He's an advocate for those struggling with mental illness. He's passionate about health equity and reducing stigma. Prior to joining Ontario Shores, Chris was a journalist and editor, locally working for the Oshawa Times, and a managing editor at Metroland Durham Region Media Group. Chris, welcome.
Thank you very much, Jay. Good evening, everyone, and I'm really honored to be here with you today for the In Conversation with Speaker series. Really, when I saw who the lineup was tonight, I was very proud to share the stage with such distinguished speakers, and I know it's going to be an amazing event tonight, so thank you for joining us. Following this, we will engage in important dialogue on the topic, and we'll invite, as Jay said, Q&A with the audience. So, I was asked to sort of set the tone for tonight, and I thought what I would do is pick one word that sort of stuck to me when I looked at all the different presentations, and that word was equity. You know, mental illness is the only illness that I can think of where the more ill you are, the more you face stigma and discrimination. You know, when we have someone with cancer, if it's stage 4 cancer, we're probably bringing over casseroles and seeing how they're doing and have empathy for that person, you know. But mental illness is different. I see people get behind things like Bell Let's Talk. They can listen to Clara Hughes and people like Michael Landsberg, or they have compassion for adolescent anxiety. But if someone has schizophrenia or comes in contact with the law or commits a crime, then society has very little understanding or appetite to support those people. My hope is that conversations like tonight, while they will unveil gaps, issues, and injustices, will also offer a path forward and dialogue that will change the way that we see mental illness and ensure all citizens get equitable, compassionate care and support. Our goal should be that everyone has the same access to all those social determinants of health that we all in this room take for granted: a good job, a safe place to live, positive relationships. Our goal should be that everyone feels that they can participate fully in their communities without feeling ashamed, ostracized, or bullied. Our goal should be that in health crisis, everyone receives the same compassion and care, whether they're having a heart attack or a psychotic episode. And to that end, businesses, schools, first responders, and society as a whole should be equipped not just with the skills, but also the empathy needed to support our most vulnerable population. It's a reality that educators and first responders are often tasked with an incredible challenge of having to be the first point of contact when people are in a mental health crisis. And those solutions to fix that don't just fall on teachers and police, but they must be collaborative. We are seeing some positive strides, things like mobile mental health unit, but we all have a long way to go. You know, police spend many hours on firearms training, and they may go their entire career with never discharging a firearm or their weapon. But approximately 1 in 5 contacts with police involve someone with a mental health or a substance use disorder. Yet generally, when you look at police across Ontario and look at their training, they may get 1 or 2 days of mental health training, and many of those courses are optional. Equity. I want to thank you again for coming tonight, and I'd like to welcome a very special young lady that I had the pleasure to meet and spend some time with, and she's going to share her story with us, and I'd like to invite Shawna Walker up to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you all. Good evening. I'm a bit nervous, but I'm going to try and see if I could convey the message and read my story to you all. Before I had my daughter, I led a very vibrant life. I was always helping people. I let nothing bother me. Even though I experienced molestation and rape, I didn't let it control my life. I didn't let it be the captain of my ship. The abuse be the captain of my ship. I took control. I didn't let that control my life. I immigrated from Jamaica when I was 6 and lived in a marginalized community in Regent Park. It was a very difficult environment with a bad reputation. There was a lot of gun violence. I lived there for 6 years, then my family moved out of that community. In 2007, when I found out I was pregnant, I felt confused. I felt I had no help. The father was not there to support me. I believe I could do it on my own and provide for my child and continue going to high school from when I was 1 month pregnant until I was in my last month, my 3rd trimester. I graduated from high school when my daughter was 1 week old after having a cesarean. Like, I worked really, really hard during my pregnancy and just stick to school. I said, I have to do this. I have a child, a baby is going to be born soon. I have to do this. I have to do it for us. I have to do it for her. I kept that momentum and just kept going and just going. And finally, I graduated from school when she was 1 week old. After I had my baby, I felt wonderful and full of joy that I had my baby. And I was graduating from high school and receiving my diploma. I didn't think about the pain. I was too happy. Thank you, Lord. I said to myself, I want a future for us and plans to attend college. Before going to college, I was robbed by my boyfriend who I was dating. He stole $5,000 from me, which was my OSAP money to pay for living expenses. I was shocked. I couldn't believe anyone would steal from a single mom and her infant. I felt shocked and in disbelief and helpless. I had to get counseling at the college. I was so embarrassed to share the story with the counselor. I was worried about being judged, and I continued to go to school, but I was struggling. So I went to school to study social services. I was trying to study to become a social service worker. By 2010, in my last semester, I was extremely depressed. Friends would ask me if I wanted to take their medication to help me. I said no because I didn't know what medication it was, and I was in denial. I did not know what was wrong with me. I did not know much about mental illness. I was unable to finish up my last semester. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I started to get worse. I began to get paranoid, and I thought people in suits were after me. I believed there were agents spying on me. I was so afraid. I was hearing voices too. I had no help from no one until it was too late. I believe the disorder I was experiencing was schizophrenia. It was in that psychosis I did the unthinkable, tossing my daughter from the balcony without realizing what's happening to me and what I had done. She's alive and she's doing well today, but the illness has taken away something that I love and cherish, and I live with this pain every day, and I'm working on repairing that relationship. So right now, I just finished family court, and I have supervised access with my daughter. So that's a step. It's been almost 2 years going through that process. And I'm so happy that I'm starting to bond and start that relationship, reconnect with my daughter. I woke up in the hospital. I was there for 3 weeks after I was brought to the Vanier Center for Women. I was incarcerated and I felt I had no rights. I was dehumanized and I felt unsafe. The guards' treatments towards me were poor and very much degrading. I've never experienced anything so dehumanizing. I remember being punched in the face by a female guard and being manhandled by male guards. I tried to get help from the ombudsman, and I was writing letters to get their attention regarding my physical, verbal, and emotional abuse I was enduring. While I was in Vanier Center for Women, I just felt I had no rights. I felt the guards didn't want to listen to you. They will swear at me. Oh, Miss Walker, effing this. I just felt like I was inhuman, like I wasn't a person. I was just someone who was there. I didn't feel like they cared. The very degrading part is when the strip search, when they'll ask you to, you'll be naked and they'll ask you to stoop down, touch your toes, and cough and be naked in that position. It was awful. I was incarcerated for 21 months and I was found not criminally responsible due to my illness. In August 2013, I got out of corrections. My family was my major support system. They were supporting me in and out of jail. They found me a place to stay. In 2014, when I was 27, I got introduced to the Center for Community Treatment with Ontario Shores. I finally started getting professional support. They helped me with my goals and helped me set realistic plans on how to achieve my goals. I went to workshop later through the years, and I had the opportunity to interview nurse candidates with other ACT team members. It was a very good experience. In my recovery process, I've learned a lot about myself, and I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one, and my mental disorder can't stop me from attaining my goals. With treatment and medication and support from family and friends and professionals, I know I'm on the right path of recovery. I want to strongly advocate for others who don't understand what they're going through with their mental health. I want to draw in the light at the end of the tunnel for those who are in the dark. People who don't understand it, like for instance, like myself, I didn't know what I was going through. I didn't know what mental illness was. I know the basics, schizophrenia, bipolar, but I didn't know the details. I didn't know the terminology. I didn't know what it was. So being a person who was in the dark and finally came to the light, I just want to just expand that help and help others to reach that light and help them to understand what mental illness is and what they're going through. I want to be an inspiration to them because of my lived experience. I want to advocate for them. I want to one day go back to school and or take a peer support certificate and just get my certificate in peer support or social services and be a voice for others who are going through this illness, who's going through whatever they're going through. I just want them to understand that, hey, you're not the only one. I understand you. I know what you're going through. I've been through it myself. I don't want to be a statistic. I don't want to be, oh, this woman is from a mental health, grew up in a marginalized community, this is how her life is. No, I don't want that. This is what I want my life to be. I want my life to be an inspiration for others. I just want to help others. I want to be there for others. Thank you.
Thank you, Trishana. Thank you for sharing your story. I know it's not easy, and I know that you want to help others, and to have the courage to come up and share that. Thank you very much. And I think that goes back to what I said earlier. It's important, you know, some of these stories for the general public to hear and not understand, and it's very hard. But there's a human being behind those headlines that you read in the news. And, you know, as society, we're very reactive to those things. And I always tell people, let's not be reactive, let's be proactive. And I look at why didn't we get to help you earlier? And why did we fail you earlier before a tragic incident or sentinel event happens? And so sharing your story, I think, helps. You're wonderful, and it was a pleasure for me to meet you and hear your story, and I know you're going to do great things, so thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce our first panelist for this evening, Yosef Fakeri. Yosef is Solomon Fakeri's oldest brother and co-founder of the Justice for Salah campaign. The Justice for Salah campaign was founded after the tragic death of Solomon Fakari, a 30-year-old Canadian man who died in prison after being beaten and pepper sprayed by guards on December 15, 2016, while temporarily in custody at the Provincial Correction Facility in Lindsay, Ontario. Staff of that facility were aware of Solomon's mental illness diagnosis, which was schizophrenia. The Justice for Salah campaign is demanding transparency